Hello guys, welcome to the YouTube channel UPSC Geek by NRG. Today we are going to start with our second lecture series, that is Western Political Thought. And as we all know that the entire edifice of political theory is built upon the base of Western political thought and philosophy, which was emerged in the ancient Greece during the time of Socrates and Plato and etc. Right? So it becomes very imperative for each and every one of us to know the basic details of the philosophy of the ancient Greece, that is of Socrates, Plato, and etc. Right? So when we talk about the importance of Socrates per se in UPSC PSIR optional, there is no question which has been asked yet, but it becomes very important to understand Socrates because his student Plato is very important topic for UPSC optional, right? And we all know that there are several questions which is being asked from Plato. So the entire theories of Plato is based upon the ideas of Socrates, right? So it becomes very imperative for us to understand the basic details of Socrates. It is not too vast, but at the same time it is very important to understand because the theories are somewhere deep, and it will also help you understand the further course of lecture effectively, right? I have given the basic details about political theory in the first lecture, that is political theory, meaning and approaches, guys. If you haven't watched the lecture yet, I recommend you to go and watch that lecture. That will also give you a better understanding about the further lectures and content in the series. Okay, so let's start with the Socrates. So the table of content basically contains life and time of Socrates. Right, we will be seeing what was the socio-economic conditions during the time of Socrates in ancient Greece. Then we'll talk about the ancient Greece itself, the region, the geography, and also about the Peloponnesian War. Then Socrates' theory of knowledge, which is very important, and again we will conclude it. Okay, so before moving further, guys, I'd love to have you all subscribe to the channel and also do leave a like button if you like the video. Okay, so let's start with the life and time of Socrates. Okay, as you can note down the date, that is 469 to approximately 399 BCs. So the main political historians, they suggest that we do not know much about the early life of Socrates. Okay, whatever we know about the Socrates is from the dialogue of Plato, because Plato was the significant student of the Socrates. However, there are two important events in his life that all historians agree upon. Okay, so the first is that the Socrates was the wisest man in the world. Okay, which is the label given to the Socrates by Oracle of Delphi. Who was the Oracle of Delphi? Oracle of the Delphi was the highest priestess of the ancient Greece. Okay, so she labeled Socrates as the wisest man in the world. Okay, and the second event which we know about Socrates is that the death of Socrates, how humiliatingly he was killed by the authority during that time uh, by coercing Socrates to take a hemlock, which is a poison drink. Okay, so after consuming a drink of hemlock, Socrates died. So that is the two important event that we know about the Socrates. Okay, so when Socrates was praised by the priest at Delphi, he went on to search for the meaning of his meaning of the title conferred on himself. Okay, that he got so much curious that why I am being called as the wisest man in the world, the title, why it is conferred upon me. So let's go out and find out. Okay, for this purpose he would engage with scholars and politicians of Athens, as he explains about his one encounter with the politicians. Okay, to find out why he is conferred with the title of the wisest man in the world, he would often engage himself in the political discourses and dialectics, exchange of questions and answer, to know how much he know about the subject. Okay, so here one discourse with the one important politician is mentioned here, and out of which he came to know that I know nothing. Okay, so what is the particular discourse is that when I conversed with him, with whom, the politician, basically, I thought this man seemed to be wise both to many others and to himself, but that he was not. He's saying he was not. I thought that he would be the wisest man, but he was not. And then I tried to show him that he thought he was wise but was not. Because of that he disliked me. He wanted to show that he thinks himself as a wise but he was not, because of which the politician disliked Socrates. But I went away thinking to myself that I was wiser than this man. The fact is that neither of us know anything beautiful and good, but he thinks he does know when he and I don't know, and I don't think I do. So I am wiser than he is by only this triple, that what I do not know I don't think I do know, I do. Okay, so how beautifully it is written here. See, the dialogue of Socrates here, that he is willing to accept that the only thing he knows is that he knows nothing. Okay, most of the time what happens, guys, that we have our own set of opinions, our own set of preconceived notion and etc, which becomes very rigid in our thinking, and we tend to know that we know everything about something, but that is nothing but our illusion. Okay, that is our opinion about something. The true knowledge, according to Socrates, is about the ideal idea. Okay, about the perfect knowledge. He is trying to make distinction between a true knowledge and opinion here, right? Nobody knows the true knowledge of anything, and most of the people have opinion, and they tend to think that they know about the knowledge, but they do not. Okay, so I know that I know nothing is the most important statement by Socrates, which can also be used in ethics, people. So note down this particular statement and remember this. Okay, so let's continue with life and time of Socrates. So upon realizing this, that he knows nothing, Socrates made the mission of life to educate others about this truth. Okay, about this truth. What truth? That making them realize their own ignorance, that we are ignorant about the true knowledge that we should know. Okay, this however was not taken with good spirit by his fellow Athenians. Okay, he would engage in many public and private debates and make people in high positions aware of their ignorance. Okay, with engagement by engaging in dialectics with people of Athenians and politicians, he would make them realize how ignorant they were. They had their opinions, they had their own subjective biasness, but they used to think that they know the knowledge, the true knowledge. Okay, so that's what is Socrates trying to realize, make them realize about their ignorance. This irked many. Okay, this annoyed many in the Athens, basically. Okay, further, the teaching of Socrates challenged the conventional wisdom and sought to change the society. All of this was not tolerated by elites of Athens, and eventually Socrates was charged with the religious impiety and corruption of the youth. Okay, on the same charges he was found guilty and given a death punishment, which he happily accepted by drinking hemlock. So he was charged with the corruption and religious impiety, that he is somewhere misguiding the youths of Athens, and on such and such charges he was forced to accept a hemlock drink to die. Okay, by the authority in the Athens. More than his life, Socrates is known for his ideas. Okay, because Socrates' life was brief, but he was known for his ideas, which are eternal, even used till date. Although Socrates wrote nothing down, we find his teaching in the writing of Plato and ancient Greek scholars. In this topic, we will try to understand the prominent ideas of Socrates, which have a bearing on politics and Plato. Okay, as we know that the Plato is known as father of political philosophy. It is very important because the most influential individual on the lives of Plato and his theory was Socrates. Okay, so Socrates was somewhere inspiration for Plato to formulate his political theory. So now this was all about the life and time of the Socrates, guys. So you can include all of these things in your answers while attempting it as introduction. Okay, now we are going to have a look of ancient Greece, what ancient Greece was. As you can also see in the map about Peloponnesian region, the Athens and the Delphi and Olympia and etc, right? This is the ancient map of ancient Greece region, basically. So Athens and Sparta were the prominent cities of ancient Greece. Okay, we have to remember this Athens and Sparta. It becomes very important when we are attempting an answer on Plato, because Plato is a result of his time. That was the socio-economic crisis which was going on during the Athens, during the Peloponnesian War in Athens. Okay, so we have to also attempt to write Athens and Sparta by being specific while attempting an answer on Plato's theories. Okay, so Athens and Sparta were the prominent cities of ancient Greece. Plato, Socrates, and later Aristotle, who was the student of Plato, all belonged to Athens. Okay, unlike today's nation state, what existed was the practice of city state. Like today, we have a concept of nation state, like India. We have US, we have, let's say, European countries like UK and etc. Today we have a concept of nation state, but in ancient Greece we used to have a concept of city state, where we used to have a small geographical entity as a city, right? And the individual city used to have an authority of a state. So we used to have a concept of city state, not a nation state. So Athens was a city, Sparta was a city, Delphi was a city, etc., right? We had the city states basic. Okay, the loyalty of a person was towards his city and not a nation. Simple. It was an agrarian society with the practice of slavery and belief in natural inequality, right? Natural inequality in the sense that every person, that there is a difference in the classes, like warrior classes, uh, business classes, ruling classes, slavery classes, and etc. Natural inequality. In contrast, today we believe in the concept of equality, right? Equal treatment of all by the law. Like most ancient culture, it was a patriarchal society. Patriarchal society in the sense it was mainly dominated and ruled by the male section of the society and not the women. Okay, women were considered inferior during those times. Okay, the citizenship of the state was conferred only upon adult males. Okay, adult males. Slaves of course were not included. Slaves, only adult male basically constituted ruling class, the warrior class, the business class, but not slaves and other classes. While women were limited to domestic affairs and had no right to own property. Okay, being a patriarchal society, very usual that women were limited to domestic affairs and had no right to own property in the region or the city. Okay, so now we are looking at Peloponnesian War. We all know that Peloponnesian War was fought in Athens, between Athens and Sparta. So let's have a look of what a Peloponnesian War was. Okay, so what is the use of this in answer is that sometimes we have to give a context to a theory, right? Let's say a theory of state of Plato. So or theory of philosopher king, right? So Plato propounds the idea that a king should be a philosopher, right? So why he's propounding the idea? Because he is the child of the Peloponnesian War. He knows how the corrupt aristocratic ruling during the ancient Greece in Athens led to a Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens, and hence he's propounding the idea of philosopher king, right? An ideal king who in any case and every case will eliminate the causation of war and will lead to a very fruitful and peace or happier society. Okay, so this is what you have to write in the answer to give context of it. It will also help you fetch good marks in the exam. Okay, so what is a Peloponnesian War? The states often fought against one another for supremacy in the region. Okay, the Peloponnesian War, which was fought in 331 BC to 404 BC, was fought during the time of Socrates and Plato. Very apt. Between Athens and Sparta, as I have already told you, influencing political developments of that period. Okay, so this was the war which influenced most of the political development of Socrates, Plato, and his forerunners in the Athens during this period. Okay, so in the war, Sparta defeated Athens. So Sparta became more superior. Athens was completely destroyed, and hence the socio-economic crisis prevailing in Athens led to the formulation of theories by Socrates and Plato. So the defeat of Athens at the hands of Sparta is considered one of the major factors behind Plato's turning towards philosophy. Okay, Plato also belonged to a ruling class, but when he saw the crisis in Athens, he turned himself towards the philosophy. He knew the political realism during that time was not adequate to have a good and ideal society. That's why he turned to his teacher Socrates to have a to walk a way of philosophy in order to have that ideal society and make Athens as an ideal city state. Okay, to understand the context, it is important to understand the sophist. Okay, so this all Socrates, sophists were basically the contemporary of Socrates, okay, and also the Plato. So in order to understand the influence upon the Socrates and also on Plato, it is also imperative for us to understand the discourses of sophists, like what sophists used to preach about. Okay, it was a group of teachers who used to roam from town to town offering their services for the free. Okay, so they were basically a group of teachers generally meant for the rich aristocrat classes. They used to teach all the kids or the students from the rich aristocrat class by just roaming from places to places and rendering their service for a free. Okay, So contemporary of Socrates, sophists would teach young people from rich families about politics and the art of rhetoric. Rhetoric is very important proponent in politics. Like rhetoric is basically a speech to sway the public or the masses. How you influence public by your rhetoric, right? Um, let's say Modi ji is the best example of that. How the rhetoric of Modi ji usually sways away the public. Okay, the prime minister basically. To summarize sophist teaching, their emphasis was how one can get ahead in politics and utilize the power to achieve personal goals. Okay, so this is the basic agenda of their discourse or the preaching, is that how can one get ahead in politics in the sense how can one get ahead in attaining the power and utilize that power to achieve personal goals, right? So here, in contrast to Socrates or the Plato, who were talking about the welfare of society or welfare of the people at large, the sophists were basically inwardly or individualistic in nature. They are talking about their personal achievement and personal goals. Okay, so from here the later individualistic school of thinkers will be emerging. Okay, so they were somewhere influenced by their school of philosophy, that is Sophism. Okay, for sophist, virtue excellence is the ability to acquire things that give oneself pleasure. Okay, so their basic idea is that the virtue is the ability to acquire things that give oneself pleasure. Okay, so remember the things which are highlighted, guys, like do mention them in the answers. It will also highlight the quality of the answer to the examiner, which will ultimately help you fetch the good marks. Okay, so thus the art of speaking well, that is rhetoric, formed an important part of their teaching, since it would allow a politician to swing the public opinions to his side. A valid point. To justify their teaching, sophists engaged in a critique of society and state. Okay, they usually engaged in the critique of society and state, how society or the state during those times were, right, which they preached as unnatural and restricting the growth of individuals. The rule of the strongest is the natural law, and the state seeks to create artificial equality. Okay, so here, like, as the idealists, they believed in the principle of inequality, that there is a particular section of society for particular purpose or for particular business. Okay, but here the sophists basically believed in the rule of the strongest and the equality in the society, right? Everyone is the equal, and the strongest will step ahead to attain the power and attain the means to satiate their personal goals and personal aims and etc., right? They are basically believing in the equality in the society. Okay, by giving individuals equal right, that everyone have the equal rights, and the people who will be the strongest, the people who will be striving towards the strongest, will be moving further to achieve their goals and seek pleasure for the self, right? This becomes evident in one of the sophist arguments. So let's see what is the sophist argument, which is basically exhibiting the idea of their notion of sophism. Okay, so we take the best and strongest of our fellows from their youth upwards. Okay, and tame them like young lions. Tame them like a young lions is to curate them or to train them like a young lions, enslaving them with spells and incantations, and saying to them that with the quality they must be content, and that the equal is the honorable and the just. But if there were a man born with enough ability, he would shake off and trample underfoot all our formulas and spells and charms, and all our laws which are against nature. The slave would rise in rebellion and be lord over us, and the light of natural justice would shine forth. So this is the statement which completely or the clearly expressing the idea of what these sophists propounded during their times. Okay, in ancient Greece. So just give it a read. It is a basic preamble of their ideology basically. Okay, so now we are done with the ancient Greece as well. We have seen the Peloponnesian War, we have seen the contemporary of Socrates, we have seen the life and time of Socrates. Just to give you a brief summary, now we are stepping into a most important premise of Socrates, that is Socrates' theory of knowledge. Okay, so this is considered as the most important concept of the Socrates, which mainly influenced Plato to propound his idea. Okay, so while for sophists virtue is to acquire power, for Socrates it was not enough to know how to acquire power, but how we ought to live in our society, right? So sophism is basically denoted on what should be, like what is basically, but the idealist school of Socrates, Plato, will basically emphasize upon what ought to be, more ethical school of philosophy people. Okay, so they will mainly focus on how a society should be, right, and more ideal standard of society. So sophists were basically focusing on the virtue to acquire power, but at the same time the Socrates is emphasizing on the idea of a means of a knowledge to acquire a society which ought to be or which should be very much ideal in nature or a perfect society. Okay, rather than knowing what constitutes life, it was more important to know the constitutes what constitutes a good or virtuous life. Okay, the objective of life is to lead a good life, and in order to lead a good life we should have the knowledge of good life. Okay, in words of Socrates, unexamined life is not worth living. Unexamined life is not worth living. You can see in these graphics as well how the theory of knowledge is interconnected. If you know the theory of knowledge, you will be able to know the learning, you will be able to know the society, and you will be able to know the general consensus, and hence it is interconnected. Okay, so sometimes in exam it is asked directly, they give you the basically the statements and ask you to comment in, let's say, 150 words and etc. So this is one of the most prominent statement of Socrates, which says that unexamined life is not worth living. Okay, very valid and genuine statement. Sometimes it can also be asked in essays, guys, like we are seeing a general tendency of UPSC that they are asking more philosophical statements. So this is very genuine statement to be asked for essay. Okay, so Socrates argued that a restless search for pleasure will produce just the opposite. Okay, knowledge rather than power and pleasure is the basis of human happiness. A very valid point. Thus, while sophists argued that state and society are unnatural, Socrates believed that society is natural, since humans are social animals, not egotistical individuals. Okay, so they are putting more emphasis on society rather than individuals, in contrast to sophists, who are giving more importance to individuals than society, more importance to individual than people. Okay, more importance to the pleasure, personal pleasure, than the welfare of the people. Okay, and in contrast opposite, the Socrates basically trying to put more emphasis or importance upon people at the large, or the society at the large, or the welfare of the people, than individual or personal gains. Okay, however, Socrates also does not accept the social order uncritically. He does not accept the social order uncritically. Why? Let's see. For him, while the law is natural, that is ethical, some of it may violate the ethics. Okay, for him the ethics is more important than the law of nature. Okay, thus it is our purpose to reform the state and the laws in accordance with the ethical standards. Like, let's say during that time slavery was natural, but according to the contemporary thinkers, it might not be ethical, right? So there will always be a temporal and spatial differentials. Okay, so something might be natural but it might not be ethical, right? So this is what is being said by Socrates. The society, government and laws are natural to the extent they embody ethical truth. So something is natural to the extent that it also embodies ethical truth. It should not violate the ethical lines of the principle. Okay, the Socrates both defended and attacked society at the same time. So, as we have seen, he propounded the idea that unexamined life is not worth living. So he is basically giving the concept of dialectics, that how should an individual examine his life, right? Very nice sounding statement, but how do we do that? So he is giving us the idea or the art of dialectics, that as we see in the life of Socrates, for him the awareness of one's ignorance was the first stage in order to acquire knowledge. For everyone or for anyone to learn something, it is important to us to accept that we don't know something about it, right? Until and unless we don't accept our ignorance about something, we will not be interested in learning or getting on the way to educate ourselves on that particular things, right? So he is saying that it is awareness that is importance for us to accept one's ignorance about something in order to acquire knowledge. Okay, in a Socrates sense, such a person was already wise. If you accept that you are ignorance about something, that is the first stage of being wise. Okay, then your counterparts, that you are at least accepting that you are ignorant about something, and that is what was said by Socrates as well, that I know that I do not know. Okay, I know that I do not know. Very valid point. Hence he was considered as the wisest man in the world. So the virtue, excellence or knowledge cannot be taught or learned according to Socrates. So he's saying that the virtue or the knowledge cannot be taught or learned according to him. Okay, it can only be drawn out for such a knowledge which is already within us. Okay, thus lecturing does no good. Okay, so basically he is influenced by Pythagoras, guys. So Pythagoras has a student uh, so he basically asked the valid question to the student, and the student propounded the theory of right angle triangle, that the sum of the square of the two sides is equal to the square of the hypothesis. Okay, so the student himself got the notion, he just asked the right question to make him elicit the concept. Okay, so he, by getting influence from the Pythagoras, Socrates evolved with the idea that the knowledge is immanent, inherent within us. We all have, we by birth, we all know the true knowledge or the concept. We just have to engage ourselves in the dialectics. We just have to examine ourselves. We just have to ask the right set of questions to get the knowledge from within. Okay, so it is not possible to teach anyone knowledge or lecture him or her. Okay, knowledge is immanent or inherent within us. Okay, to bring out this knowledge, Socrates proposes the method of dialectics. Dialectic is a method of questioning arguments and counter arguments that will challenge the initial understanding of the student. Okay, and bring out the true knowledge from within. As he was engaging in dialectics with several politicians, he used to ask very genuine question like what is justice and etc. And he propounds the idea that if you ask the right set of questions, you will also get right set of answers, because people tend to know something about something. So, okay, it is very immanent and inherent within them. We just have to ask the right question to get the right answers. That is basically a basic idea of dialectics. Is in dialectics, a teacher will ask the student about his opinion on the subject matter, then he would counter his understanding by asking certain questions. Okay, if he gets the answer that what justice is doing good to someone, then they will again ask counter questions like, if someone does bad to you, how can you do good to him or her? Okay, so by engaging oneself in question and answer, questions and answers simultaneously, you will reach to a synthesis, which is a concoction of thesis and antithesis, and hence that will be a true knowledge. Okay, so in our psychology there is something called as dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. Okay, there we tend to ask to our client about the questions about their lives, about their past lives, about their traumas and etc, right? And they themselves tend to answer certain questions which they might not be aware of, right? In general sense they might not be aware of the something, but when we psychologists ask certain set of questions, they come with the answers, and when they get to know those set of answers, they realize ki this is something very valid point which I was not emphasizing upon, or which I was not pondering upon before, right? So this is the important, I'm trying to show how important it is to ask the right question before getting or expecting anything in return as a right answer. Okay, so this is a basic idea of dialectics. So this will go on till the student ultimately learns the fallacy of his initial opinion and ultimately recognizes the true knowledge. Okay, so with frequent, like with the often questions, people or the student will ultimately know the fallacy in his understanding or opinion about the topic or about the concept, and he will hence gain the true knowledge of the particular concept. Okay, the dialectics works, however, only when the student is ready to learn. He has to realize and accept his own ignorance. Okay, the dialectics works very effectively, it works, but only on the condition that the student must accept his ignorance. Okay, and realize and accept his own ignorance and keep himself ready to learn. Okay, so very valid point, guys, like not only for the sake of study or education, but also in the general life as well. It becomes very imperative and important for us to accept our own ignorance about something, right? Until and unless you don't accept your ignorance, you will not be making yourself ready to learn about something, right? That is somewhere your ego, which also keeps you in illusion that you know something about something. But once you break that that the lens of ego or the mirror of the ego, and then you see your true self, that I was complete ignorant, and you embark yourself on the journey to learn further. Okay, so Socrates makes a distinction between two types of knowledge. The first type of knowledge is opinion. As I've already told you, the most of the time we tend to have the opinion about something and we misthink that as a knowledge, but that is sheer opinion. Okay, which is completely exact opposite of knowledge. Okay, it is not conceptual, it is ignorance appearing as knowledge. The second type is true knowledge, ignorance, and the second type is true knowledge. Okay, true knowledge is a result of dialectics. Once we self-examine ourselves through dialectics, whatever we get at the end, is again true knowledge, but again that is subject to refutable or verification. Okay, it is conceptual and unshakable. The true knowledge which we get at the end is conceptual and unshakable, which cannot be refuted or destroyed. Okay, in the words of Socrates, everyone has an opinion, but the philosopher alone has knowledge. Okay, so most of or the general people generally have opinions about something, but the philosopher alone has a knowledge of the concept. Okay, so this is all about his concept of theory of knowledge, guys, and also about the dialectic. So to give it a conclusion, we can just write a statement about everyone has an opinion, but the philosopher alone has true knowledge. And how can dialectics leads to acceptance and then change? Once we accept our ignorance, we embark on the journey to change and become the best version of ourselves. Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you so much, guys, for sitting till the end, and I hope that you have gained a significant insight about Socrates. And remember one thing, this is also a main motto of this channel, and also very inspiring quote for myself as well. Thus you strive, so you thrive. Okay, आप जितनी मेहनत करेंगे उतनी आपको फल मिलेगी. So keep consistent, keep yourself consistent throughout the journey, and I assure you that you will be at least gaining some insights so as to talk rhetorically on the subject or the discipline of political science to your peers. Okay, you will have some confidence to attempt an answer of PSIR. Okay, so thus so far for today, guys. So before ending, I'd love to have you all subscribe my YouTube channel, and do leave your comment as well if you feel something needs to be talked about. I would genuinely respond to you guys, and also like my video, and do show your support and love. So I love you all. Thank you so much, and keep striving.